Kilmallock, some man, don't ask me why, but I think there could be an opening for him inside for Limerick this year. Obviously, a little bit tongue-in-cheek there. But, actually, the first 3 or 4 balls went into him. They didn't stick. And I actually didn't think he chased Rob Downey as hard as he could with those first couple of balls. And I was like, this won't go down great with management. But from then on, he looked excellent.
Yeah, I thought he really turned it around. He looked like Rob Downey walked out with a couple of balls, particularly the first couple of balls. And we'll talk about Cork and Limerick in a bit. To me, that was like Brian Hayes got 2 points and obviously got the match winner, and Cormac Borsang got 2 points in the first half as well. But to me, it was a lot of the new faces stood out with Limerick, and it was a lot of the familiar faces I thought stood out with Cork. Obviously, Conor Lehane, I thought Rob Downey had a good game as well. Kieran Joyce was pretty solid at centre-back. But yeah, I think from a Limerick point of view, that would be the most heartening thing, that it was the new faces that stood out. But the thing is, when you're talking about like new faces or ones to watch in 2023, you're probably a lot more, it's probably a lot more realistic to pick a county that's not going to be in an All-Ireland final, maybe. Do you know what I mean? How are you going to get into the Limerick team? How are you going to get game time? It's going to be very, very difficult. So I think Ross Banville was mentioned there.
I was going to say,
from a Wexford point of view. Timmy Clifford, maybe from a Kilkenny point of view. There might be a few more options there. Garrod Dunn, like Garrod Dunn was inside for Tullaroan in the Kilkenny Championship this year, and like he's obviously under 20 again this year, but he's a player on a lot of people's lips in Kilkenny, and one that people are really looking forward to. Probably maybe I'd even go down a small bit, like Dublin. There's probably going to be more openings with Dublin.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and a Wexford.
We've been corrected, by the way. Dowling. Yeah, that makes more sense, doesn't it?
Yeah. Okay, yeah. Listen, I thought it was half decent Irish. I'm actually not too bad, but my second names and stuff wouldn't be great.
Yeah. So yeah, and you know what? There was plenty of lads who played well for Dublin the other night. Like Paddy Doyle, he was really good. He's from Naomh Barogue. Excellent performance. And Mark Grogan, who's not all that young, but it's just he hasn't featured for Dublin previously that I can recall. I thought he was really good before he went off injured. So let's talk a little bit more about Limerick and Cork the other night. So like you said, Conor Lehane, he's the one who did an awful lot of scoring. He was out centre forward. Brian Hayes looked okay inside as well. He got 2 points. Obviously, huge man. Is there anyone else that you thought, oh wow, there's something like Kieran Joyce? He's very cool on the ball, isn't he, when he comes out, and he does well in terms of like getting his arm in under an opposing player's hurley to win that sort of free as well. But who else stood out for you for Cork?
Well, Kieran Joyce, I'm a big fan of Kieran Joyce's, but there's times you think he's been a bit too cool on the ball, and you think he's going to get hooked or you think he's going to get blocked. Did you see the goal, Shane? I was there and I watched it about 10 times after, but my initial reaction to it was Oisin O'Reilly got the tiniest of touches. Now, I mean to say top of the like
fingertips,
top of even a fingernail job that looked to me to have changed the direction on it. Now, Fintan O'Toole was there from the 42 and Paul Dollery was there of the Sun, and they were adamant that I hadn't taken a touch. But I don't know. I trust my eyes, even though they're not the best. I'd still trust them in that scenario. O'Reilly probably be a bit disappointed with his performance in general, though, because it was a chance to stake a claim, and he was quiet enough. Was actually taken off with 10 minutes to go. From a Cork point of view,
he didn't really get into it either, did he?
Not really. Got a score in the second half, but Limerick were totally reliant on David Reedy's frees. Really, they were one down at the break. Hit 7 of the next 9 points. I think 6 of them were frees from David Reedy, who missed a free actually underneath the stand at the end. And they had a couple of bad wides. Tom Morrissey had 2 bad wides in the closing spell. Conor O'Grady, who came on and got a point, missed one as well. Shane O'Brien had a kind of a bad wide as well. But from a Cork point of view, we were asking there about players that kind of stood out. Yeah, you know, a lot of it is kind of what I said to you. Rob Downey, Conor Lehane up front. Borsang had glimpses. Brian Hayes had a couple of glimpses, had 2 goal chances denied, one by a save by David McCarthy, who was getting a chance in the Limerick goal, and the other was a hook by Fergal O'Connor. Shane Barrett, quiet enough. Conor Callahan was taken off. Luke Meade was taken off. Tommy O'Connell, midfield, was taken off. Brian O'Sullivan went off as well. You know, there wouldn't have been... that's what I suppose they won the game, which is heartening enough. But Sean O'Donoghue, I thought, had a very good game at cornerback as well as captain too, and was kind of bullying a few lads in there as well. But there's a lot of it is the same names that'll be coming back to a Cork, which to me, that's no, I don't know if it's worrying at this time of the year, but by all accounts, they have a lot of training under their belt, and probably scraped over the line against a Limerick team that only had 3 starters from the All-Ireland last year.
And I came away from the game feeling, again, unsure that Rob Downey should be at number 3. Now, I'm not saying that there isn't a place for him somewhere in the game, or somewhere in the team, but I don't think that's the position for him. So who's in the full back line for Cork? Asked Conor Heaney. So it's Conor O'Callaghan, Sean O'Donoghue was the other cornerback, and Rob Downey, he was full back. I thought the other lads did fine. I thought Conor O'Callaghan did fine. Thought Sean Donoghue did well. Buried a lad at one stage, I remember in particular. He's just really good physical player. But I'm just not sure that the balance is all that right. Tommy O'Connell, I wonder, is he more of a halfback than a midfielder? But then again, I probably haven't seen him just enough to be able to make that sort of call. And of course, Pat Ryan has endeared himself to you straight away, hasn't he?
Pat Ryan says, I might just introduce myself to him because I don't think I've ever been involved in an interview before. And he said he remembered me playing cornerback, which is high praise because nobody ever remembers the cornerback. But I remember playing Sarsfields in a challenge game years ago. We were Offaly champions, they were Cork champions, and I must have been late 30s, and he just controlled things between the 265s. Just such a smart player. He's some interesting comments, Shane, actually, just on he hasn't been involved with the Cork seniors since 2017, 2018 under Kieran Kingston, and he was just talking about how physicality has increased even more, and he was even talking about Limerick's physicality yesterday. Just fly through the comments really, really quickly because I thought it was interesting. He also bemoaned their concession of frees. Cork's been nearly 4 times more than Limerick, and a bit tongue in cheek, he said, which is amazing for a Cork team to be giving away more frees than the opposition, because he's basically implying that a lot of people, maybe including us, say that they're not physical enough and maybe don't put in enough tackles. But he just talked about Limerick's physicality and even getting the win. He just said, anytime you put on the Cork jersey, you're expected to perform. You could see with Limerick that they had a lot of changes, and that's the kind of level they're at. All of their fellas performed. You could see the high level of effort they were putting in and the tackling and physicality that they brought to it. When you think of the fellas they were missing, you can imagine the physicality that they'll bring. It's my first time being up close to it again in 5 or 6 years, and you could see that the physicality has gone up another notch since I was involved in 2017, 2018. We're kind of watching games, Shane, as well, from the Eagle's Nest or the Crow's Nest or whatever they call it. And it's high up, and you can see a lot from a tactical point of view. But even I went down to pitch side in that O'Byrne Cup match between Meath and Laois the week before last. And it's only when you're down on pitch level that you can actually hear the hits and you can literally see the steam flying off, lads. Hurling and football at county level, let alone club level has gone high, but at county level, it would blow you away. And if you can't survive physically, you just won't survive, probably no matter how skillful you are.
Yeah. Limerick certainly dug very deep into their panel, didn't they? I mean, there was a few first teamers, lads we would have seen in the last couple of years, and even I just looked through the team here. Richie English, obviously, he's played.
He was brilliant, Shane, as well. He was absolutely brilliant, and he was brilliant at this stage of the year last year, and hardly got a sniff of game time, but he was outstanding.
Yeah, and we've seen Aaron Costello plenty, maybe not enough in big games, as for his liking, but at 3 you've Richie English, 6 you've Dan Morrissey, Darragh O'Donovan, who was probably lucky to get away with a swing back during the first half, even though he'd taken a fair dunt himself. He was midfield. Robbie Hanley's a big man beside him as well. David Reedy at centre forward. And then, the full forward line, Barry Murphy and Oisin O'Reilly, they have a bit of experience, even if they haven't featured hugely in the last couple of years. So, yeah, it was, but there was an awful lot of players that you probably won't see that much this year. 1 or 2 of these young, sparkling talents may, but would you be somewhat worried if you were Cork that you only won by that amount in your home ground against such an experimental Limerick team?
That was probably one of my main takeaways from it, Shane, I have to say, because if you look down through the Cork team, Patrick Collins, Rob Downey, Sean O'Donoghue, Kieran Joyce, all playing in their kind of natural positions. Half forward line, Conor Lahan, centre forward, Conor Cahalane and Luke Mead either side. There's a fair chance that could be the starting half forward line in Championship. Inside, Cormac Boasang, Brian Hayes, Shane Barrett. Shane Barrett would have obviously started plenty of Championship games last year. There's the nucleus of a good team there, whereas you say with Limerick, David McCarthy was, you know, a newcomer in goals. Richie English down the middle, Dan Morrissey, Darragh O'Donovan, and the Tom Morrissey on the wing. But most of the rest of them are guys that were coming in off the bench at different stages, or guys maybe that had been on the extended panel and hadn't got game time. So that was, to me, that's a small bit worrying. A small bit worrying from a Cork point of view. But listen, that's the first of a trilogy of games. They play in the league on the 4th of February down in Páirc Uí Chaoimh, and they play then in Munster Championship as well. I have to say, there was 4,500 there in Páirc Uí Chaoimh. Yeah, like the appetite there for it is absolutely huge. It was like a summer's day. I got the train down. It was Baltic in Dublin. It was lovely in Cork. Absolutely gorgeous. It was glorious down there, I have to say. And the pitch was kind of cut up a bit for this time of the year, but in general, the conditions were really good for this time of the year. Did
you find that it was more Cork or more Limerick people there?
You're kind of clouded your view a bit from the press box or whatever, but there was definitely a decent cohort of Limerick. I'd say probably about 1,500 Limerick, maybe 1,500 to 2,000. Probably Cork just edged it, but I like Páirc Arena as a venue, and I was only thinking the last time I was there was when Borrisoleigh won the Munster. There's something quite intimate about it or whatever. I don't know. I just like it as a venue, and I think there's always a good atmosphere down there.
Yeah, the only thing we lacked that day was having a few candles set up in front of us as well to keep the intimacy going.